Okay, we ready? Well, let's go. One day, my time as a father will be done. There will be a last conversation, a last lesson, a last moment where my voice carries weight in the room. And when that day comes, when I'm gone and the noise of life keeps moving forward, I don't want my children to remember what I owned, what I earned, or what I accomplished. I want them to remember that there was a man in this world who cared more about them than he ever did about himself. Because that kind of love changes people. It teaches you what matters. It teaches you where to stand when things get hard. It teaches you how to live when nobody's watching. And I want that lesson to follow them long after I'm gone. But here's the part most people don't talk about. That kind of love doesn't come naturally. It's not instinct. It's a decision made daily to go to war with yourself, to face the parts of you that would rather run, numb out, look away, or choose comfort over responsibility. Because the greatest threat to being a good father isn't the world. It's the version of you that wants to put yourself first. And every day I've had to choose whether I was willing to fight that man. This episode is about that fight. The pride of being a father, the weight of responsibility, and the quiet honor of choosing something more than yourself. Because fatherhood isn't proven by what we say. It's proven by what we're willing to face so our children don't have to. You weren't given your children by accident. God chose you specifically to be their father. Welcome back to the Daddy Up Podcast, a place for men who are done running and ready to rise. This is the space where fatherhood gets honest, manhood gets redefined, and healing becomes leadership. I'm Jason Jones, a husband, a father of 4, and a man still under construction. Here we talk about the things most men avoid, so our children don't have to carry what we refuse to face. This isn't about perfection. It's about presence, it's about courage, and it's about transformation. This is the Daddy Up Podcast. So let's go ahead and get into it. You know, fatherhood gives you a lot of titles. All right, your dad, your provider, you're a protector, you're most certainly a leader. But there's one title that isn't given. It's earned. And it's the one that matters the most. Father. Not biologically, not legally, but intentionally. Father is the title you earn when you stop living only for yourself, when your decisions carry weight because they affect lives beyond your own, when your comfort becomes secondary to your responsibility, when your growth becomes necessary instead of optional. And that's the kind of pride I'm talking about. Not the pride of ego, not the pride of dominance. The pride that comes from knowing your life is no longer centered on you. And that's a different kind of pride. It's the quiet kind. It's the kind you feel when you look at your children and realize that your life no longer belongs to you alone. That pride doesn't puff your chest out. It settles you. It anchors you. Because being a father isn't about dominance. It's about responsibility. It's about waking up every day knowing that someone else's safety, stability, and future are tied to how you show up. Now, that's not pressure to fear. That's an honor to carry. You know, I'm a proud father. Now, it's not because I always get it right, but because I choose to stay in it. I choose to keep showing up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it exposes my flaws, and even when it forced me to grow faster than I was ready for. There is pride in knowing that your decisions don't stop with you, that the way you speak, the way you handle stress, the way you treat people, the way you recover from failure, all of it is being watched, absorbed, and learned. And that awareness, it'll change a man. Not overnight, but permanently. Because once you understand that your life is shaping lives, selfishness starts to lose its grip. You stop asking, what do I want right now? And you start asking, what does my family need from me today? That shift from self to service is where real pride lives. Not the pride of ego, the pride of purpose. But here's the part that doesn't get celebrated enough. That pride doesn't come with a cost, because choosing something greater than yourself means confronting the parts of yourself that resist it. And that's where the real battle begins. You know, the hardest war that I've ever fought wasn't with the world. It wasn't with circumstances. It wasn't with other people. It was with myself. Every day there's a version of me that wants the easy road, the version that wants comfort instead of discipline, the version that wants escape instead of presence, the version that wants to justify flaws instead of actually facing them. And becoming a father didn't remove that version of me. It actually exposed him. Because when it's just you, your flaws mainly affect you. But when you're a father, every weakness echoes. Every shortcut costs someone else. Every unchecked habit becomes a lesson, and every moment of avoidance gets absorbed. So the war became unavoidable. I had to start fighting urges that used to run my life. The urge to numb instead of feel. The urge to quit instead of endure. The urge to defend my ego instead of admitting I was wrong. And some days, that war looked dramatic. Other days, it looked painfully ordinary. Choosing restraint when nobody would have known. Choosing consistency when motivation was gone. Choosing to stay present when it would have been easier to disappear. And here's the truth that most men don't talk about. You don't win that war once. You fight it daily. And victory isn't perfection. It's honesty. It's looking in the mirror and saying, I see what I'm capable of, and I'm choosing something better today. Some days you win, some days you don't. But if you're willing to fight more days than you surrender, you're on the right path. And when it's all said and done, that's the war that matters most. Because no enemy will shape your children more than the version of you that shows up at home. And here's where that war takes on meaning. Because the fight with yourself isn't just about self-improvement. It's about what your children learn from watching you face it. Now, whether we like it or not, our children are always watching. Not just when we're intentional, not just when we're teaching, and not just when we're calm and composed. Nah, they're watching when we're tired, when we're frustrated, when we're under pressure, when we think no one's paying attention. And they're not just learning what we say, they're learning how we live. They're learning how a man responds when life doesn't go his way. They're learning whether strength looks like denial or accountability. And they're learning if failure is something to hide or something to confront. Now, every time I choose to face myself instead of run from myself, I was teaching them something. Not with words, but with my consistency. They were learning that flaws don't disqualify you. Avoidance does. They were learning that being a man isn't about never falling short. It's about standing back up without excuses. And maybe the most important thing they were learning was this: that responsibility isn't something you complain about. It's something you carry. Because children don't remember our speeches nearly as much as they remember our posture. They remember whether we owned our mistakes or we blamed the world. They remember whether we stayed engaged or checked out. They remember whether we chose growth or we chose comfort. And one day, long after they stopped listening to advice, They will repeat what they observed, not because we demanded it, but because we modeled it. And when you realize that your children are learning from the way you fight yourself, it reframes everything, especially how you define success. For a very long time, I thought I knew what success was. I thought it was measured in numbers, in income, in accomplishments, in what you could point to and say, look what I built. And there's nothing wrong with working hard. There's nothing wrong with providing well. There's nothing wrong with having ambition. But somewhere along the way, fatherhood changed the measurement, because success stopped being about what I achieved and started being about how people around me felt. How my children felt when I walked into a room, whether they felt safe, whether they felt seen, whether they felt supported, whether my presence brought calm or tension, whether my voice brought reassurance or pressure. And that's a totally different scoreboard. Success became waking up and asking, did I show up the way my family needed me today? Not perfectly, but honestly. Success became choosing patience when frustration would have been easier, choosing presence when distraction was tempting, choosing responsibility when excuses were available. And here's the quiet truth. Your children won't remember how busy you were. They'll remember how available you were. They won't remember every sacrifice you made. They'll remember whether they felt worth it. And that's success. Not loudly celebrated, not publicly praised, but deeply felt. And when you redefine success that way, it leads naturally to a question every father eventually has to answer. What do I want my children to carry forward when it's their turn? When I think about my children growing older, when I imagine them stepping into their own lives with their own families and their own responsibilities, there are things that I hope they remember. It's not rules, not speeches, not even lessons in the traditional sense. I hope they remember how it felt. I hope they remember that they were loved without condition, that they were worth all the sacrifice, that they mattered enough for someone to change. I hope they carry forward the understanding that life isn't about avoiding struggle. It's about facing it honestly. That being flawed doesn't make you weak. Running from your flaws does. I hope they remember that responsibility isn't something to resent. It's something to rise into. That when life gets heavy, you don't disappear. You lean in. You stay. You do the work even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's slow, even when no one is clapping. Because one day it will be their turn to lead, their turn to sacrifice, to choose something bigger than themselves. And I hope when that day comes, they don't feel overwhelmed by it. I hope they feel prepared. Prepared because they saw what it looks like when a man chooses growth over ego, presence over pride, and love over self. And before I close this episode, there's something I want to say directly to my children. Not as a lecture, not as a demand, but as a charge. To my children, if you ever listen to this one day, long after I'm gone, I want you to know something first. I was and am a flawed man. And most men, when they discover their flaws, either ignore them or run from them. But because of the love I have for you, because of the responsibility I felt to not just provide for you, but to lead by example, I chose to face mine. I chose not to let my flaws define me, and I chose not to let them scare me. I went to war with myself every single day to prove to myself that I was worthy of raising you. Some days I won, some days I didn't, but I never stopped fighting. And I hope more than anything that you carry that forward. Not perfection, but courage. The courage to look in the mirror and deal honestly with who you see. The courage to choose growth over comfort. The courage to love people more than you love yourself. There will come a day when it's your turn, when someone depends on you, when someone looks to you for safety, when someone's future is shaped by how you show up. And when that day comes, I hope you remember this. The greatest thing you can give another human being is not money or status or answers. It's your willingness to become better for them. I love you more than I could ever fully explain. And one day, when you become parents yourselves, you'll finally understand why. And to every father listening right now, that same charge applies to you. If you're listening to this as a father, I want you to hear this clearly. The pride of fatherhood is not found in perfection. It's found in willingness. The willingness to face yourself instead of blaming the world. The willingness to grow instead of getting defensive. The willingness to choose your family over your ego. You don't have to be flawless to be a great father, but you do have to be honest. Honest about where you're at. Honest about where you need to grow. Honest about the version of yourself your children are learning from. Because one day, your time will be done too. And when that day comes, what will matter most is not what you accumulated, but who you loved and how deeply you were willing to change for them. That's legacy. And that's pride. And that's what it means to live for something more than yourself. And that, my friends, is a wrap on this episode. I want to thank you for joining me today. And as always, remember, God chose you for this calling. Keep learning, keep loving, and keep leading your family in faith. That is how you daddy up. See you guys next time. Be safe. Daddy up.